Well, my experience with breastfeeding was rather different. I didn't start till he was about 10 weeks old.
It was our first child, so the first few weeks were fairly challenging.
And I didn't think I could do it. I really didn't think that I'd be able to go. I figured I'd be given up and quit.
And then eventually he latched on, and now it's pretty natural the way it's supposed to be.
As you go along and you see how good she's growing and how, you know, she's thriving and she's smiling back at you, and it just makes all that time and effort worth it.
Our organization welcomes, cherishes, supports, is there for women and infants and children and moms and dads and families. And that being baby friendly is, to me, it just is. It's a way where we support and provide an environment where babies and women are cherished.
Health Canada is recommending breastfeeding for the first 6 months exclusively.
That's no water, no sugar water, no formula, any other solids. So really, we're talking about exclusivity, breastfeeding only to 6 months. Then after that, we do have the addition of solids.
Mothers definitely can continue breastfeeding while they're introducing solid foods, and we want them to. Health Canada is recommending continuing to breastfeed for at least the first 2 years of a baby's life and even beyond.
There are almost too many health benefits to the mother to list. There are psychological benefits, but there are genuine health benefits as well.
Our family has a history of breast cancer, and that was one of the benefits, that breastfeeding reduces the risk of breast cancer for the mother and for the baby.
And also ovarian and endometrial cancer, and a lowered risk of maternal diabetes.
Mothers that don't breastfeed have more heart disease later on in life as well. They're also at higher risk for osteoporosis. We know that mothers that breastfeed have higher bone density after they wean than they had even before they were pregnant.
Some of the benefits to mom in terms of breastfeeding would be, the uterus contracting and going back to normal size sooner, which can help with bleeding, and in that being, they usually will have a better iron status at that point. Being low in iron can make you feel yucky and tired and not be able to cope as well.
I've noticed that I haven't been as sick, like through the springtime where you get all the colds and flus and stuff. I'd never got it. Even when my family members got it, I didn't get sick.
Women who breastfeed can use some of that fat that they've deposited during pregnancy to produce breast milk, and that may help them to return to a pre-pregnancy weight sooner.
A friend of mine is still struggling to get the weight off, and her baby is about 7 months older than mine, and I'm already back to my previous baby weight.
I really didn't want to do the formula stuff after I priced that stuff. I figured I get mine free.
It costs about $1,500 a year to not breastfeed, and that includes bottles, baby milks, teats, sterilization, the equipment to sterilize. So that's a huge cost to the family. And if the baby does have some kind of a sensitivity to cow's milk, then they're going to be looking at having a different type of formula. And those formulas are very expensive.
We never really thought about the cost. It was the decision was just made to breastfeed, but then it was just one day we were looking at formula and bottles and stuff in the shop, and we thought, wow, that must add up to quite a lot.
This is one of the great things about breast milk, is it's ready when mothers need to feed their baby. The baby cries, the mother puts the baby to breast. It's the right temperature, it's clean. The receptacle that it's coming from doesn't have to be cleaned, it doesn't have to be sterilized.
You don't have to worry about mixing anything incorrectly, using a dirty bottle that wasn't properly sterilized. A lot of it's convenience. Everybody else that wakes up through the night actually has to wake up, go downstairs, clean a bottle, mix it. I just kind of roll over and prop a baby on.
A lot of the bonding and that you get from breastfeeding and the cuddling, and then they snuggle up and they go to sleep. And
one of the things I realized after the fact, after my wife started breastfeeding, was just what she got from it was that the whole bonding experience, and it made her feel a lot closer to the baby, and I know that she really valued that.
It's actually kind of nice knowing that she needs you, so it's a really nice feeling.
Mothers who are breastfeeding actually have a unique opportunity to practice birth control in a way that no other person can, because when a mother is breastfeeding exclusively for that first 6 months, as long as she is not giving any other foods and she's not putting the baby off, not expecting the baby to go through the night feeding. We don't want mothers to go any longer than 6 hours between a feed in the night. And as long as she's not giving any other foods, she's probably going to not ovulate. If mothers want to know more about it, it's called lactational amenorrhea method. And if mothers want to know more about it, they can contact the health unit. Any of our health care nurses or public health nurses are going to be able to give them information on that method. Babies that are not breastfed, they're going to have higher illness. They're going to have a higher gastrointestinal, so diarrhea. Babies who aren't breastfed are going to have more colds. They're going to have more ear infections. We see that babies that aren't breastfed have higher rates later on in life of Crohn's disease. They're going to have higher rates of heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. They're also going to have higher rates of certain cancers like lymphomas and leukemias and things like that. So we really want to breastfeed so that these babies aren't put at greater risk for these illnesses.
We don't understand this very well in medicine, but sometimes the immune system turns against the body. And why this happens exactly isn't known, but what is known is that this happens less in breastfed babies.
And what color is an elephant?
Brown.
And?
White.
What color is that?
Babies that are not breastfed are at risk for not reaching their highest IQ potential. So, and you know, we often will hear that babies that are breastfed are smarter, and they are, but we're talking about a small amount, maybe 8 to 9 points. In a preterm baby, it is really really important. It can be up to 11 points IQ on the IQ scale, and it doesn't mean you're going to have a genius baby if you breastfeed, but what it does mean is that your child has reached his highest IQ potential, and that's what every mom wants. Every mother wants her child to reach their highest potential.
With formula feeding, it's very prescriptive, and so that we get some parents who are looking at their specific amounts and very programmed to make sure that their baby is getting a certain amount of ounces in a day. When appetites do vary somewhat, and you know, each child is individual, so they don't all need the same thing. And sometimes it's that prescriptive method of feeding that can kind of go beyond what a child actually might require, or maybe not getting enough. One of the other benefits of breastfeeding is that it doesn't require sterilization and careful preparation. With formula, we really do need to be very careful because powdered formula isn't sterile, And there are a number of steps that you need to go through to make sure that it is safe for baby to consume. And some of those steps are a little more complicated than most parents realize.
We're a culture right now that really relies on processing of foods. When we process our foods, we do not know what is happening to them. We've had babies that have been fed baby milks that have different bacteria in them. We have, the most recent one was the melamine scandal of China, where melamine was added to the milk before it even got to the processing plant. And babies are affected. Up to 50,000 babies were affected in China alone from that scandal. And we know that that melamine has come into our country as well in the baby milks. So we want to make sure that we're feeding our babies foods that we know. We don't want to be just relying on companies to make foods for our babies as well.
When you have an emergency, you know, like floods or, you know, I mean, we see those all around and they're not just in third world countries. If you don't have clean water, if you don't have ways to be able to, you know, have formula or anything, I mean, moms can breastfeed. They don't need bottles. They don't need all those other things. It comes prepackaged, sterilized, clean, fresh. It's great, you know, if you look at emergency preparedness, that's probably one of the easiest things emergency preparedness wise that a community can do.
We know now that babies that aren't breastfed cost extra in healthcare costs. In the first year of life, they cost anywhere from $300 to $400, maybe even a little more per baby for healthcare costs.
You're dealing with the perfect food that is very ecological. We don't have a lot of containers and everything else littering our environment. So that's not a direct benefit to the baby, but we all benefit from something like that.
In our society, that is one of the big barriers to breastfeeding, is that family doesn't understand. We come from a society that did not breastfeed, so it was okay for someone else to feed the baby, and mom could go out and do things. She could go and take her class at night if she wanted to. She could go back to work, and grandma would often take care of the baby. And it's hard for grandparents now to understand why mom is not sharing the baby.
Babies, you know, 24 hours a day, 16 hours of it may be feeding, but there's the other extra 8 hours, which is diaper changes and naps and bathing and all those good things that dads have that opportunity to bond with the baby.
I did more than my share of the diapers, so we still split the load. There's just some things that I couldn't do.
I did the intake and he did the outtake.
Yeah, absolutely. Did garbage disposal. So
best advice I can give to dads is just to be there. And to encourage it, not to, because sometimes, you know, with the fatigue and everything, she may feel like it's not worth it, but you got to be there to kind of be that rock to kind of help her understand that this is important.
The number one reason why moms say that they quit breastfeeding is because they say, I don't have enough milk. And so a lot of times they've either heard it from their mom, they've heard it from their friends. It's been 2 to 3 weeks I've run out of breast milk.
My mother actually told me that if you weren't leaking, you didn't have any milk. And you know, that was a little disconcerting, yeah. For sure.
There are a lot of myths out there that if you're too young, or an older mom, or a first-time mom, or that if you don't have ample breasts, that you can't breastfeed. All of these are myths, and with the proper support of the health teams at the health unit and the lactation consultant, moms can be helped to realize that this is a reality for them.
they can just get through that couple of days of increased feeding. Their breast milk, it's the supply and demand. So where your baby's demanding more and you don't have enough for that period of time, that's the way that you produce more for your baby. So you just got to get through a couple of days of increased frequency in feeding, and then your milk will come again.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because once you start supplementing, the mom produces less milk. She produces her milk on demand.
Typically the issue will be that my baby is in the 5th percentile on the growth charts. And we have to understand too that these growth charts that typically are used or that were used were really based on formula-fed infants and not on breastfed infants. So we do need to take that into consideration. The WHO growth charts are in the process of being adopted, and hopefully that will help ease moms' concerns that way. They will plot differently on that chart because that is the normal way of feeding.
A big problem in our culture is that breasts are sexual objects, and we've forgotten that they weren't originally meant to be a sexual object. They're meant to feed babies. And so when a breast is lactating and there's a baby around, that's what the breast is for. And breasts can have dual roles. I use my lips to talk, but I can also use my lips in a seductive way. I can use my legs in a seductive way, or I can use them to walk. And people don't mix up those messages, and we need to not mix up the message of what the breast is for as well.
Once at the beach, I heard people behind me saying, "Oh my God, can you believe?" Which I'm thinking, really? You can't even see, and the baby's hungry, so yeah, I'm gonna feed her.
Breastfeeding in public for me has been an adventure. I'm a naturally shy person, so I don't necessarily like to, she's done it with 4 kids, so you're used to it. This is my first, and so it was a little more difficult. And I know I went to Detroit once to a restaurant I was mentioning earlier, and the guy in front of me said, "No, you can't do that. You need to stop." And I was in tears. I mean, that was really hard.
As a community, it's just supporting women. I mean, women shouldn't have to be hiding in bathrooms to feed babies, and they shouldn't have to, those just aren't acceptable things. I mean, would you eat a meal in a bathroom? No, none of us would. So why should a baby have to be fed in a bathroom or hidden in a corner, or, the mother have to go and try and find somewhere because people are uncomfortable?
We don't want business owners to be telling mothers to go to the bathroom. For one thing, that's an infringement on the mother's right to breastfeed anytime, anywhere. It is against the law in Ontario to ask a mother to move, to cover up, to be more discreet, or to go somewhere else, because that's her human right to feed, and it is the baby's human right to feed when the baby needs to.
And I think it's just that continuous message getting out. And when it starts coming from the government too, I think that makes a huge difference and a bigger impact, because it's a bigger voice. It's, you start it with those little voices, and then the voices come together and they become louder and stronger, and it's getting the voice bigger and bigger until that becomes, okay, so this is what we do in society.
And things are going well with the breastfeeding so far, or do you have any concerns with the breastfeeding? My role is as hospital liaison. So I have the unique position of being able to be here in hospital as well as in the community. So that means that when moms deliver, first thing in the morning, I can go in, I can meet them, I can find out what their situation is, what kind of their background is, what kinds of things that they're going to need once they go home. So with that first initial assessment, I just link them up with community programs so that if they're from Dresden or Bothwell or Wheatley, I can let them know specifically what programs and what services are offered in their community. So we send moms home with a pamphlet that has the dates and times of all the baby weigh-ins, of the lactation consultants in the community, both the ones that are offered at the health unit and the ones that are offered, we have private lactation consultants here as well, just to make sure that they've got those numbers, those names. We make sure that they have one of the breastfeeding booklets so that if they need to refer to anything at home, sometimes it's hard to get a hold of people at 2 o'clock in the morning, so this way they've got all those things right at their fingertips, all those resources.
Mothers need to have access to a lactation consultant, not only for education, but if they're having problems, they need a specialist, someone who knows how to work around that difficulty.
I took a class, the breastfeeding class, here at the health unit, and they said that it would be a full-time job the first 6 weeks. And so I looked at it like that. You can't quit a job within the first 6 weeks, right? So I just kept going and kept going and kept going.
We offer breastfeeding classes for prenatal moms or moms that are expecting. Really encourage the dads to come as well. It gets it so that everybody hears the same information, so that a mom, if she's having some worries on the second night and says, man, this baby, he's feeding every hour on the hour. I don't have enough milk. What's going on? Whereas if the dad went to the class and say, relax, it's okay. It's just second night. Your milk is changing from colostrum to mature milk. It's gonna, it'll happen. Just hang in there.